Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now, guys? We can do all the videos in the world that we want about transfer prospects, the squad dynamics, and everything else in between. But one of the top comments that just keeps coming out there now, and there's some good reason for it, is what about Kieran Tierney? In the video today, we're going to be chatting all things KT, the prospects of him returning to Celtic, what that might look like, the risk, the reward, the pros, the cons, and really everything else in between around this move, because it's a transfer rumour that really won't go away because the player is so close to every one of our hearts. He is one of our own. He has climbed the mountain at Celtic. He's then went into the Premier League and done amazing things. And sadly, with a failed stint in La Liga and an injury record that just keeps getting longer, this is a transfer that is always fraught with pros and cons. And I think it does divide a lot of Celtic fans out there. In the comment section, I want to hear your thoughts and feelings. Is bringing KT back a must-do transfer at all costs? Or what are the caveats you would put on it? I'd be really interested to see what your thoughts and feelings are in the comment section at any point in the video. If you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We're pushing for 10,000 subscribers and we cannot do that without your support. And let's just get stuck straight into this one, because this is a situation on a number of different levels that you really don't need me to really, do any exposition on. You don't need me to do any sort of groundwork for in terms of the prospects of the player, the profile, what he would add to the squad, the style of play we've got, our need for a left back. I think we're all pretty well versed on this one. But Kieran Tierney is a player, like I mentioned in the intro, that is so close to every Celtic fan's heart around the world. He is a guy that really came into the first team against all odds, without much fanfare, high expectation of him being, the next breakout star to come from the academy. And he is a guy that just left everything out there for us domestically and in Europe. He achieved everything, he conquered everything. And I don't think I'm alone in saying when he did leave, it was one of those heartbreaking moments that you experience as a Celtic fan over the last 10, 15, 20 years, where you do see him leave the club despite us going for history, despite us going for some monumental achievements. But the transfer fee around it, his injury situation at the time as well, it was one of these transfers that for all parties involved, maybe except for Arsenal, it just made absolute sense. It was the best thing financially for the player, for the club, and for everyone involved. And I don't know about you, but since he left for Celtic to go to Arsenal, I watched every Arsenal game I possibly could. If they were on the telly, I made sure I would watch that game rather than something in Italy or Spain or all the rest of it. And that time when he went to Arsenal, they were really on their knees. They were really looking to try and, come through that post-Arsene Wenger transition period. And he very quickly became one of the things that really sparked Arsenal into action. He really gave them that real-world football nous. He was a guy that just went on the pitch, took no prisoners, had that winning mentality. And he made such a huge impression. He was very quickly a fan's favourite at Arsenal. And he very quickly became one of the captains in the squad as he went on to eventually go on to lift the FA Cup, which I thought was a fantastic achievement to see Kieran Tierney be a major part of. And it's a great accolade for him in his career. But sadly from there it did kind of go backwards. The injuries didn't really let up. If anything, they started to creep back into his game. And then under Mikel Arteta, the Arsenal squad has just went from strength to strength. It's been regenerated, it's been rejuvenated, it's evolved over all the transfer windows that he's had under his stewardship. And one of the things, again, quite similar to maybe Celtic, is those wide defensive positions are very crucial to the teams making it to the very tip top of the mountain. And subsequently, his position is one that Arsenal have really struggled to find a Kieran Tierney replacement for over the last couple of years. They've been playing guys that are right-footed in at left back. They've tried converting midfielders to play in that role. They've actually signed left backs that couldn't actually get in the team. And that would make you think from an outside perspective looking in that Tierney wasn't up to the level, wasn't actually carrying his weight. But if we have a look at Tierney's performances for Arsenal over the last couple of seasons, obviously there's a lot of absences here, a lot of DNPs down to injury, which we can remove very easily. And you can see that for a left back, for a defender, he's very much of the level, he's very much of the standard. And at the very beginning of his Arsenal career, he was much more effective at actually helping them, win matches, clean sheets, goals, assists, that sort of thing. But he has been reduced to being a bit of a bit part player, rotation squad player at absolute best. I've seen that Ian Wright meme come out, where he sees his teacher and he's like, "Oh, I thought you were dead." I've seen Arsenal fans using that meme to describe Kieran Tierney in the squad photo that came out for the 24-25 season, because he's just totally fell off the radar for them. But this is a guy that could play every week in the Premier League for a big team, an important team, and really give as good as he got, And for me, when he was in the Premier League, he was always in the conversation for being in the top 3, top 5 left backs in the division, even when Arsenal themselves were still in like a Europa League squad. They weren't really breaking into the Champions League places again. And overall, like a very consistent performer, very consistent attendee for matches when fit and available. And this is what made him such an important part of the Arsenal squad, because a left back that does get goals and assists, can play every minute, can wear the captain's armband, and can be a bit of a leader from the back. It's a very, very valuable player to have. And this was something that we got huge value out of when he was at Celtic. And similarly, when he went to Real Sociedad on loan, I do watch a lot of La Liga myself, so I found it really easy to try and make sure I wanted to see Tierney in La Liga. I wanted to watch every opportunity I could when I seen he was in the starting 11 to see, you know, how bad did the injuries affected him? Was he still in a top 5, top 3 league in European football left back standard? Was that sort of the level he was still playing to? And I think, as you can see here, his ratings out of 100 throughout his short time in La Liga with Real Sociedad, he definitely still showed those glimpses. And for me, whenever I watched Tierney playing for Sociedad, any of the games where he did start, and especially if he didn't come off injured, which sadly became a bit of a meme, became a bit of a recurrence at his Real Sociedad stint, for me, again, he was still very comfortably top 3 left backs in the division when you looked at him on his individual qualities, defensively and offensively. But one thing that really did shine out in this Real Sociedad stint is that playing more than 1 game a week was where his breaking point was. Playing like 5-6 games in a month always resulted in him breaking down, and they did their very best to try and bring him back into the squad slowly but surely. There was a short time where, when he first came into the club, they actually were really keen on signing him on a permanent basis. But no matter how, slowly they walked him in from the shallow end to the deep end, it just always came back to have some sort of recurring injury. So he signs for Arsenal in 2019. He gets a brand new contract in 2021, and that contract ends in 2026. So he's in the final 18 months or so of his contract. And because he's got that contract extension after being there for 2 years, he is firmly on, first team left back Premier League wages, as it were. And I think that's been the major stumbling block for anyone that's been looking to take Kieran Tierney out of Arsenal, whether it be on loan or a permanent transfer. We did see some rumours throughout the summer, teams like Newcastle, Aston Villa, Brighton, some of these types of squads might have actually looked to bring Tierney in, but I think for whatever due diligence they've done, whether it be the actual money associated to the transfer, whether it be the player's fitness, but those moves never really materialised, and he's been absolutely absent from the Arsenal squad so far this year. So it does bring it back into focus, because we've seen him in London with Brendan Rodgers at the Foundation Gala, laughing and joking in the hallway, and everyone's thinking, maybe this is the dominoes starting to fall on the transfer. We're starting to hear more and more rumours that Celtic are open to the deal, that Tierney wants the deal, and it's about making everything work. And for me, this is a move that I'm really, really conflicted with, because when it comes to sentiment, when it comes to my heart, when it comes to the club personality that we spoke about in the last video, Tierney's an absolute no-brainer. You would take him back to Celtic in an absolute heartbeat. To an extent, you would probably pay him some decent wages. You'd probably give him a really good allocation out of the wage budget, because he still offers elite, European elite level output at left back. He knows what it means to be a Celtic player. He knows what it means for Celtic to compete at the top end of European football in the Champions League. He knows how to find the back of the net, and he is a guy, like I've mentioned already, that leaves everything out there on the pitch. But for me, that's really quite quickly where the positives stop, because if we have a look at the Celtic squad like we've been doing on the channel for the last couple of videos over the last week or two in this international break, the theme, the profile of our left backs now has very quickly changed. We see Taylor be the inverted fullback. We see Valley, when he comes into the squad, just doing the same job as Taylor, and he's doing that kind of understudy role. And we even see in the B team, Mitchell Frame and anyone else that's playing in left back is doing that same kind of role. Kieran Tierney might excel in this role, but he is very firmly an old school left back. He wants to hug that line. He wants to have some interplay with the winger that's in front of him. He wants to get to the byline. He wants to get into the box. He wants to score some goals, and he doesn't mind going shoulder to shoulder and defending like a man. So in terms of the current squad construction we've got, it's not really a match made in heaven, because if we do add him back in here, a more standard kind of left back role, as it were, it does just expose the midfield a little bit more, because that inverted fullback gives us a lot of protection in the centre ground in the middle. I don't think we're ever going to ask Alistair Johnson to do that role, so maybe it does help the squad evolve on a little bit. Maybe we just go a bit more all-out attack, a wee bit more, gung-ho, as it were, especially domestically, when we don't need, as many defensive options, as it were. But from what I've seen, certainly for the back end of the Arsenal career, and what I've seen at Real Sociedad, is it's very hard to imagine that we can rely upon Kieran Tierney for 90-95% of the matches that we're going to be facing, which means then you need to really wrap him in cotton wool and really decide what fixtures he's going to play. You really need to pick your moments with him. And, you know, although in theory that's something that you could manage, and oh yeah, you don't need to worry about playing Ross County away, you can play Motherwell at home, you can play the Champions League, you can play the Derby, Hearts away, Hibs at home, don't worry about St Johnstone, don't worry about Inverness or Livingston or whoever else might get promoted next year or whatever. Doesn't ever really tend to work out that way. You know, people will get into a run of form, people might think his injury problems are behind him. Maybe they could be. Maybe I'm being a wee bit pessimistic on the injury front, but it's just so prevalent from his career over the last year or two. I think you would be stupid to ignore it really at this point. And if you're doing that, then you need another left back that is just as good to help carry that load, to help do the job share. Now, we've got a great job share kind of thing on the go here on the right-hand side with Ralston and Johnson. I don't think you're going to get Taylor to sign up for that, personally. I don't think you're going to get Valley to sign up for that, personally. So then if we are bringing Tierney in, we're not extending the Valley loan. For me, that probably goes away. And Taylor probably walks out the door as a free agent as well. We then bring in Kieran Tierney, and we're probably no further forward when it comes to the left-back spot. We're then looking to bring in maybe one of the guys from the academy to do the job share thing like we've done with Ralston. Maybe we get another Valley type in to kind of dovetail with it. But again, it just feels like it would cause more problems further down the road than what it would solve in the immediate term, sadly. At 27 years of age, Tierney should be in the peak of his career. He really should be at the peak of his powers. And for me, as a Celtic fan, as a big Kieran Tierney fan, I would love to have him back at the club, you know, but it was just when I do weigh up the pros and the cons of it, I just don't think the pros outweigh the cons ultimately. Like I mentioned in the last left back video, not to do any spoilers for that, but another big player that has their contract ending in 2026 is Andy Robertson. And for me, if you've got Tierney in the squad, you're probably not going to get Andy Robertson in. I would love to see Andy Robertson wear the hoops. We've had Tierney wear the hoops, and Tierney's a lot younger than Robbo. If we got Robbo in 2026 or 2025 for a couple of years, his kind of swan song in his career, and then he moves on, Tierney will then be around maybe that age as well. And if he's been around the block, maybe he goes to America or Saudi or somewhere like that, I don't know. And, you know, overcomes these problems he's had in his career, and then he's made more money again, which is a great thing for him individually. You could then look at him in his early 30s as maybe somebody I think you could bring in at that stage, a guy that's been around the block a bit longer. I know he's been away for a few years now, but even more so, and with a lot less pressure on wages, because at 27, 28, it's really hard to see, you know, him going on a pay-as-you-play deal, or a pay-as-you-play, or, you know, anything where it's like strictly tied to like appearance bonuses and all that kind of thing, which is, I'm pretty sure, is the sort of contract Celtic would want to draft up for a player that has this much, you know, kind of injury jeopardy, as it were. So there's a lot of rumours going around. I wouldn't be surprised one bit to see it happening, and I would be overall happy to see Tierney come back emotionally, sentiment-wise. You know, I'm never going to turn the guy down. I'm always going to welcome him back, but like I say, with the obvious problems we've had at left back, he does fit the mould. He does fit the profile of what is actually missing. A guy that can play Champions League, a guy that can play the best teams in our league, certainly, and be a cut above, like firmly a cut above a known quantity. Probably a very nominal transfer fee, maybe a bit more wage heavy. But it's just that injury record, and then it's maybe then the cascade, the domino effect of what the left back department actually looks like. Taylor leaves on a free, like I mentioned, Valley doesn't get extended or signed, and then we're left with just Tierney, which is a different problem to just Taylor. Maybe it's a better problem, maybe it's a worse problem. You guys can let me know in the comment section. But one area that I do think that this could be like a real box tick successful transfer is if we did have a bit of a change of shape, a bit of a change of tactics and style at Celtic, because one of the most successful roles that Kieran Tierney's had in his post-Celtic career has been for Scotland, where he's played left centre-back of a back three. Brendan Rodgers, you might remember from his first stint at Celtic, said that he felt Tierney's future would be as a centre-back. And if Tierney was, I don't think he could play centre-back in a back four. Well, I'm not saying he couldn't, I'm sure he could. I don't think that's where you get the optimal Tierney, but if we did reconfigure into some sort of back three shape, maybe you go Tierney and Alistair Johnson, either side of Carter Vickers. Maybe you go Carter Vickers, Scales and Tierney. There's a lot of options that could be done here. But if you play him as part of a back three where he doesn't have to do that big shift up and down the pitch, and if you've seen him getting injured for Scotland, generally it is when he's really getting maxed out, going up and down the pitch, you know, and that kind of thing. But if three in the back, especially domestically for us, you can really on the pitch manage his workload, how much he's having to run without it being detrimental to the squad or the shape or the recovery positions and all the rest of it. But by bringing him in to be left centre-back of a back three, you then have like you know, the midfield question that we spoke about in the last video then becomes even bigger. And then the left back situation becomes even bigger, because if he's not really the left back and then we change the shape so drastically like this, like maybe you could have Alistair Johnson as a right wing back, maybe you could play Dyson on this left hand side, but he's actually, it's a kind of lopsided shape where he's more of the forward that doesn't track back, although we know Dyson can track back. And Alistair Johnson is more of the defender on this side. He doesn't actually attack as much, he maybe tucks in a bit more. You see that quite a lot around modern football for teams that do play three at the back, that maybe have this kind of lopsided approach. So something like that maybe would work. But I think it does ultimately, if you try and bring Tierney in as a left centre back, give us a lot more work to do in the transfer market than maybe Celtic would bargain for at this stage. So it's one that I'm very conflicted with. It's very much a head versus heart one. And I think when it comes to Celtic, and especially Celtic's money, how much money we've got and how difficult it's been for us to spend on high quality acquisitions, I would really, in the longer term, be frustrated to see us give Tierney big wages, pay any sort of transfer fee on it, and then we get 3 months down the road and he's out for a year, or we get 3 seasons in and we see that he averages 10 games a year. Because then that breeds a totally different situation. Your feeling towards the player changes a bit. Your emotions with the club obviously come into it then a bit as well. And this is a guy that's got a firm Celtic legacy under his belt at this point. Absolute hero, legend, one of our own from the academy. Been there, done it, won it all. Went down to England, held his own. Went to Spain, held his own. Does his best for Scotland. Is definitely a best 11 player. Has been to international tournaments with Scotland, you know. So I think my head would overall rule my heart on this one, and for me it would be a no. This is a transfer that just doesn't make enough sense ultimately. I'm really excited to catch your thoughts in the comment section of this one. On screen and now some other stuff that we've made, maybe about left backs that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Hail, hail, and moan the hoops.